Insurance results are about much more than numbers. They offer insights into the risks people are facing, how insurers are responding, and what it means for advisors and the clients. In this conversation with PPS Group CEO Isak Smith, we unpack the group's latest performance, what the recent claims experience reveals about the current risk environment, how these insights translate into value for PPS members and the advisors who serve them. Welcome, Isak.
Thank you so much.
So PPS latest results were recently revealed. Which key numbers really stand out for you, and what does it say about the organization's overall performance?
Well, first of all, it is the biggest, most value that we have returned to our members. In fact, it's a huge amount. So when we think of the value that we return to our members, we think of three things. First of all, the claim payments, and that is our first priority.
Yeah.
We need to be there when they need us most. So claims. Then there's also the exit payments we pay when members eventually leave us, typically when they exit their life cover phase. So that's the profits that they've accumulated that we then pay out. And then the third is those who stay with us, extra additions to their profit share accounts. Now, if we add all of this together in 2025, the number comes to more than 30.5 billion. That is a huge number. That's a huge number. So on the claim side, also the biggest claims yet even bigger than the COVID years. So in total, it's more than 4.5 billion that we paid out, both on the life side. Even the short-term insurance is now becoming into play more and more as that business grows. So that's that one. And then if I jump to the profit share payments, a very, very big year for us, 6.88 billion that we've added to profit share accounts. But there was one thing I'd qualify. What helped us a lot in 2025 was, of course, the good investment markets. Because the thing is, all the profits that we do allocate to our members, it stays on our balance sheet. It's an account that we keep for each member. It stays on our balance sheet. It is our capital to do business. It's only when they leave us, those exit payments, when we pay it out to them. So what do we do with that money? We obviously invest it, and the investment returns then also gets added. And if you have a bull year market like in 2025, then that helps a lot. So there's a lot of investment profit in it. Yeah.
You made a comment about even more payouts in claims than what you had in COVID. It was not part of my questions, but I'm really keen to get some insights into that. What do you see there?
Yeah. Actually, two things. The one is obviously the business has grown. I mean, COVID is now, sometimes it feels still like yesterday, but it's now like 5 years later. So the business has just grown. So there's a bit of that. But the other thing, you get these statistical ups and downs. So last year, it just so happened, especially on the life claims, death cover, the wrong people passed away. Those were the bigger covers. In terms of number of claims, it's more or less year on year, there wasn't that much growth. But sometimes you have these years just that for us, the average value was just a lot bigger in 2025 than in previous years. That bumped it a bit up. Then, as I say, short term starting to come through again as that business grows. So there's quite a bit of growth in it as well.
What is the growth numbers on the short term space?
So our short term insurance business. So the total, I think a good way to measure the size of a short term insurance business is the premiums that goes into the business. So last year it reached 500 million, so more than 500 million that in gross premiums that came into the business. We in a normal claims year, if something like that exists, short term can be very volatile. It's sometimes very weather dependent, and again 2025 was such a great year from that perspective. There wasn't really big weather events here and there, maybe a bit of flooding and so on. But in a kind of a normal claims year, that business is now big enough that it's profitable, and it's the short-term claims were about 225 million. which is a very good claims ratio. But 2025 was just a great year in terms of claims in the short-term side. I think you will see that across the market, most short-term insurance.
100%. Do you feel that people are starting to put more of their eggs in one basket? So that's why you see a growth of the short.
Yeah, I think so. I think
especially with the PPS model, right?
Yeah, so remember, we only started underwriting short term about 10 years ago, in 2016, and I think there is a little bit, people just want to become comfortable with the brand, especially short term. Some of the advisors that didn't know us so well on the short term side, it's often different advisors than life brokers. And I think you almost have to, in your the brand people must become comfortable, but I think we're now there. We see more and more. And the other thing is we encourage also cross solutioning. So we've got what we call a cross holdings booster. So if a member makes use of more of our solutions, even including Profmet, which is technically actually independent, it's got its own independent board and so on. But then there's a bit of extra profit share for them.
Yeah, 100%. Think about things. Any unexpected trends and patterns that you've seen in the claims space?
Yeah, as I say, all over we've seen claims growth, and a lot of that is just the growth of the business. You do have these volatility. So in 1 year, you will see critical illness is a bit more than expected, and then the next year less. That's often what you will see. Disability was good for us in 2025, not that many claims as the previous year. Critical illness again more. But yes, if we look at the book, what trends do we see? Look, as I say, on the death side where the big overruns were, and that's more the average values. But yeah, it's always, I just wish overall people can live healthier lives. Now, there are those that's great, but yeah, I think in the professional space, which is obviously our target market segment, professionals have got stuff for them often. They see lots of stress, things like that. And I think the balance thing, to be able to exercise maybe a bit more, that's sometimes a bit tough. So, and we hope we can help them in that regard. So we're busy with the platform development, which you maybe, if there's Stan can talk a bit more, which we really want to assist them in that regard. Yeah.
It's good to hear. PPS, as you know, operates under a mutual model, which differs from traditional insurers. How does this shape your approach to growth, sustainability, and member value?
Yeah. Now, look, we've been founded 1941. Identis mutual model, never strayed from that. In the funeral space, of course, there's AFPOP, that's also a big mutual. But in most of the other solutions, we're the only big mutual insurance business in South Africa. In fact, we're the biggest on the African continent. And we think it's such a great model. I mean, it's makes my job easier. I don't have shareholders and analysts and so on. It's everything. You can just be focused on our members. I've said about I mentioned our big balance sheet, and that's a lot of capital that we can deploy in new growth ventures. Short-term was one example. I mean, way back investments when we started that business many years ago, also an example. Recently, for growth, we've started an associate business in Australia, also about 10 years ago. And last year, 2025, we obtained a license to operate in New Zealand. So that's a new thing. And then Glue is the non-professional market segment. So that's ways that we deploy our capital in new growth opportunities.
And what do we see? This is not about Glue, but what do we see in the Glue space?
Yeah, again, like
understand this mutual model.
Actually, in that segment, it's new, because there was, since the big demutualizations of a quarter of a century ago, that option wasn't available in the non-professional space.
Yes.
It's as if, to be honest, I don't think people truly appreciate the model. But that, of course, gives us a huge, it's a differentiator. So, like the PPS in the short-term space, I expect it to take a bit of time just for the brand really to get out there. But I think it's a brand that will grow. And in a couple of years' time, it's going to be a well-established brand in the market. And also on the short-term insurance side, there's Glue there, and also on the investment side as well. So it's not only the life space; it's a diversified financial services brand that we are investing.
But that is once again how we see and where we see the importance of advisor, because that's a lot about communication and education and trying to explain how this model works. And it cannot happen without the advisor.
Absolutely.
Which brings me to the next question, where we operate in a space where there's a lot of movement towards digital and direct.
Yes.
How does the advisor fit into the PPS ecosystem? And how is that all growing?
Yeah, it's always that, almost like a triangular thing. There's the solution or the product supplier, that is us. There's the client, and there's the advisor. We often say one mustn't think of it as a two-dimensional triangle. It's almost like, especially because us being a mutual, it must almost think three-dimensional. That client is a client of the advisor, but it's also a member of the mutual. It's almost a bit like a prism. But the advisor is, the nature of our products is such that it's not really something that can be sold direct. There's a lot of advice that needs to be. So advisor is crucial in our space. We have got a small agency, about a quarter of our business through that, but 3/4 is the independent advisors, independent brokers, and through all the years, they have been such important partners for us. Yeah. No, we cannot do business without them.
What does PPS's claims experience say about how well clients understand the cover they buy, and where advisors still obviously play a critical role in managing those expectations?
Yeah. Look, we try to do a pretty good job when it comes to the underwriting stage. We don't want to underwrite at claim stage. People must be sitting. That is what, at the end of the day, what you almost buy peace of mind. You want to know that if something bad happens, I'm going to be covered. So at PPS, we often sometimes, maybe fairly or unfairly, accuse that our underwriting is tough. But look, it's the nature of our product. Most of in the income side, it's a 7-day product, and it's so we need to do a pretty good job. So at times, we might be going to go a little bit further than others on the underwriting side, so that we don't sit with issues at claim stage. I think all other things equal, we'll probably say our underwriting is a little bit more. It's more strict, more, we just want to make sure that, all those things are sorted and not that, and as I say, the nature of the product also, so advisors must just appreciate that. If one also does a good job on the underwriting side, it helps to keep premiums in check. You don't have to have you reprice and sit with an issue. My canary in the coal mine, when is the number of issues that cross my desk, people that are members that are unhappy with something, internal arbitrator and so on. And we track that from year to year. If that spikes up, I know there's a problem, maybe it can be a miscommunication or whatever. But glad to say last year actually came down the number of issues. There were weeks when almost like nothing, there's not the very unhappy broker or the unhappy member. That's good. But it's always part of the CEO job, whenever somebody's really angry with something, I want to solve 30 seconds and so on, and I need to jump in and say, one thing that must just be appreciated, I'm not an underwriter or a claims person. I cannot overturn that. I'm not skilled for that. But what my job is to make sure that all information has been looked at, turnaround times, the service was there, and so on. So that's my job to make sure that something we properly looked at, or was something perhaps overlooked that must be brought in, and so on. I read every internal arbitrator case, and that gives me also a better feel for what's happening in that space.
And I suppose with the way that you underwrite, most claims should be fairly straightforward. Is there a percentage in terms of unpaid claims where a client was maybe completely misaligned, or what is that percentage?
Yeah, that's there are claims sometimes that people thought they were covered or not, but I must say it's fairly low. For example, on the income sickness side, it's very, very small. It's low single digit numbers, very small low single digit numbers that the claim is turned down. It's very interesting. The number of claims in a year, last year more than 25,000. Now, being more a life assurance business, as I've said, our short-term insurance business relatively still quite small. That's a big number.
Yes.
That means what's it, more than 2,000 a month. So that is because of the sickness. The 7 day. There's quite a number of that we pay out.
And also with the way that you, and I think that most insurers underwrite these days, non-disclosure is also becoming like a lot less, right?
Yeah, I think, I think the brokers do a pretty good job. They also don't want to sit with the risk that somebody, at claim stage, they try their best. Sometimes people just forget about something, and is it really material? At the end of the day, it's just that you want to be able to price correctly for the risk. Often we find that often brokers want to stay in control of that underwriting process. Look, something that we want to actually start pushing for, and we see that with our business in Australia, how great that works, is actually tele-underwriting.
Okay.
So it is actually when one of our underwriters then have the whole engagement and ask the questions and so on. It's kind of off the plate of advisors of brokers. And I can tell you one thing: we want that business as badly on the books as the broker. We're going to look for excuses to actually put the business on the books. So if it has to come with maybe an exclusion or something, but it takes a bit of change management for people to become comfortable with the process. But we just saw, as I say, in our Australian business, how great it can work, underwriting intervention.
Looking ahead, what are the key focus areas for BPS?
Yeah. Well, first of all, don't take your eyes off the ball of the core business. I mean, our core business, our life business is Motoring Ahead, and that's the platform that provides us the ability to go do some other things. I think the new kids on the block, New Zealand Glue, obviously we want to get traction there and growing. Usually the first year is just making sure processes work and so on. Are you okay on the pricing side, things like that, before you really start scaling. I think in 2026 we enter that phase now in Glue that we want to start really take the brand out and that scale. But then I mentioned earlier we're working on a very exciting project that we call it kind of the Mutual System, but it has got its own brand, which we will reveal quite soon. I think that is going to be a game changer. It's something that's going to help our advisors bring them even closer to their clients. It's got very nice financial modeling tech in there that we want to make available to all our brokers. It's got a couple of dimensions. I mean, it's career dimension. We want to help our members and assist them and connect them with others. Financial dimension that I mentioned. Then there's a wellness dimension as well, and that coming back to my remark of earlier, people are busy. It's all of us struggle to lead balanced lives and so on. There's a wellness piece in there. And then there's a personal growth and almost an impact thing. So it's something we're very excited. We're doing it with one of the big advisory businesses. It's a huge development for us. And second half of this year, vote for that one.
Looking forward to it. We love innovation and we love changing things up. So very excited to hear about that. I think lastly is that your message to our audience and your audience, the brokers, the advisors.
Yeah, I think my message is just that we cannot do business. We tie to them. Our success is their success, and their success is our success. With many, we've walked such long journeys over the years. They always like become colleagues, or you cannot really call independent advisors colleagues, but that is how it is. Yeah, just a big thank you for this. Trust and that is earned over years. And we're not always going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes and so on and help each other. But yeah, just a very, very big thank you for that. They trust their clients and their clients' future, their client solutions with us at BPS. It's a privilege that we know must be earned.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.